else shows up to be physically
will.
present because I can't always see.
Did you get Sonia?
I've got Sonia. I heard her be welcomed in, so I don't know if anyone else is going to show up in person. It's from what I see, it's like this teeny tiny little picture with pin-sized heads. So
Yeah, we'll let you know if anybody else shows up.
thank you.
So we're recording, Giuliano.
All right, thank you. And Terry, if you're in there, so if anyone has a question or raises their hand, you want to just let me know or acknowledge them?
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Will. You're welcome.
All right, it is 6:02, and I'll call the Facility and Transportation Committee meeting to order. Any additions or changes to the agenda?
I'm here.
I have none.
All right, nor do I. Is there anyone there for public comment for items that are not on the agenda?
Nope.
All right, moving right along. Review and approval of meeting minutes. Those are the minutes of March 14th, 2022. If there's nothing to change, I'd look for a motion to approve the minutes as written.
So moved.
There's a motion for Terry. Do I have a second?
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to.
I'll second.
Yeah, you can second.
Right, motion is second. All in favor of the minutes as written, please vote aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. We'll move on to new business, review of the revised 5-year plan. Does everyone have a copy of that?
That's that. Yeah.
Cool.
Yes.
So you want me to kind of just take it away?
Yeah, and then we'll do questions after.
Sure. Well, I'm open to questions as we go. I mean, so other than me running through, every single item, I'll kind of just, in generality, touch on it.
Hey, Jamie, maybe you should start off with how you came up with creating the 5-year plan.
Sure. I'm going to say maybe about 10 years or so ago, we were asked to create a 5-year plan. At that time, obviously 10 years ago, we had a lot longer list of a lot of big projects, a lot of small projects that were needed to be done. So, created the list, prioritized the list. So that's why a lot of things that's either not on this list anymore, or they're on there that may say NA, not applicable, is because they're projects we've done, in the past, beyond the 5 years ago plan. So that's kind of a quick snapshot of sort of how we got there. And maybe that's where I'll start off with. Anything that says NA on there is because it's something that we've already addressed. Maybe, for example, for the high school, for roofing, it says NA across all 5 years. Approximately about 10 years ago, we replaced all the roofing at Spalding High School, as well as we insulated the roofing and replaced the old ventilation that was there with new. So that's why that says NA. Maybe if you skip down to where it says asphalt paving for Berry Town and Spalding, same thing. I'm going to guess maybe about 10 years ago, we did the same thing for Spalding. I think it was a 2-year phase. We repaved all the asphalt around the school. Berry Town, we did that a couple of years ago. We repaved all the asphalt around the building, with the exception of the bus loop in front of the building. And then with Berry City, that's to be determined. That's something within the next few years we're going to try to address for Berry City. And I'm going to kind of just jump around a little bit, and then I guess towards the end you can hit me with your questions. But I'll kind of jump on some of the big ones. Fire alarm panel, and fortunately all 3 schools, we've upgraded, replaced the fire alarm panel at all 3 schools. But the infrastructure, the actual wiring within the building itself is still, meets code, still functioning. So that's why we did just the fire alarm panel. Door replacement. You'll see it under Berry City and Berry Town. That's exterior doors. A lot of exterior doors need to be replaced for both Berry City, Berry Town. We've replaced many of those through the years. And actually, I'm not sure why it says it's blank for Spalding. That should be, to be determined as well. It's always an ongoing project. Bleacher replacement, that's kind of a big one. Berry Town, just as of last year, we replaced their, I'm going to dare say, probably their original wooden bleachers when school was built back in the late 60s. Replaced those with ADA accessible, meets all safety codes, building codes. They're a motorized bleacher system to pull them out, retract them. So much safer to operate as well. Stay away from workman's comp claims. Let's see here. Library renovations for Berry City. That one to be is the carpeting. That's original carpeting in Berry City. I like to think I'm going to try to tackle that one sometime in the next couple of years. It's due. Spalding, we renovated the library a few years ago, so that was sorely needed when it happened. So that's why it's not applicable. Berry Town, it hasn't really been addressed yet, the library in there. But from my memory, and I don't go in there a lot, but from my memory, that carpeting in there is in great shape. The walls, the structure of the library itself, it's, in my opinion, is in good shape. There hasn't been any inquiries about renovating that library, so it's kind of that's why it's kind of left blank. Flooring, I'll touch on the flooring. At Berry City, we've got to be determined, but that's just an ongoing project. We'll tackle 2, 3, 4, 5 classrooms a year and remove the VCT tile and carpet combination and go back with strictly just all VCT tile for several reasons. Primarily though for health concerns. You stay away from allergies, anybody allergic to carpeting, just the means to clean carpeting, especially in the last couple of years with COVID, with a lot of students eating in the classrooms. Very hard to maintain the cleanliness of carpet, whereas with tile, it's pretty quick to clean. At Berry, let's see, I lost my page here. Berry Town, same thing. It's just an ongoing annual project. We'll pick somewhere, 3, 4, half a dozen classrooms. We have a ways to go there, but we've actually tackled quite a bit of it in the last 4 or 5 years. So that's an ongoing project. Same for the high school. We're actually, I dare say, within the next couple, 3 years, I think we will have completed that project. All of our stairwells, hallways have been done. The middle floor of the building, I want to say with the exception of 1 or 2 rooms, the middle floor is completely done. The ground floor, same thing, within a few classrooms, the ground floor has been done. And the very top floor, that one has maybe about a half a dozen classrooms. So we're within a few years of having all of our asbestos floor tiles removed throughout the building. So that was a long going project, but we're almost there. Building safety, you'll see in there's a $5,000 price tag for each year. So currently, that's what we budget in our safety line item per building is $5,000 to go towards safety, which primarily is electric door strikes, surveillance cameras. That was a bit of a budget cut. For a while, we were budgeting $10,000. I want to say one of the schools maybe went up to $15,000. But proud to say that our schools are very good shape when our safety measures. All 3 of our buildings have electric door strikes as well as a central office. We have anywhere 20, 30 something cameras in each building. We're in very good shape with our safety measures. But if, if budget would allow, we certainly could spend more. There's always more that you can do. I'm gonna kind of sort of stop there, let you folks, if you've got questions about the rest of this chart.
Jamie, the that line for boiler upkeep.
Yeah, that's kind of just a way to keep that, like on the parking lot. Annually, as things come up, there's always some type of boiler repair, whether it's the oil boiler, propane, or the wood chip boiler. That's just kind of keeping that on our list. Several years, just routine maintenance. There's not really things we need to do. But then sometimes you'll have a motor go bad or pump go bad. But that's just, again, just kind of keeping it current, keeping it there.
Okay. Yeah, I assume there was routine maintenance. I didn't know if there was any bigger plans other than that. So if it's just a placeholder, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it is. That's what it is. Oh, sorry.
What does ESSER stand for? I'm just catching up on acronyms.
So that's ESSER.
Okay,
And forgive me, I'm not going to remember exactly what it all stands for.
That's okay.
But it's part of the COVID emergency relief
Okay,
funds
perfect.
for schools.
I assumed maybe, but I wanted to double check. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jamie, so is it fair to say this is really projects? This isn't just regular maintenance stuff. This is for the most part projects, but well, I guess some of the roofing stuff would be regular maintenance since they're bigger projects.
Majority projects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I was looking at the list from last year. I think it was June of last year. There was a list by building that you had put together, and some of those items aren't on here. Would that mean they're finished, or maybe they're just falling down the list of priorities?
Well, then I always have, and I brought this with me, I have my annual summer list projects.
Gotcha.
And I'll share that with you
Yeah.
as well, what we're doing at all of our.
Yeah, I
buildings.
can run through them. I got them written down to them, like for Berry City parking lot, but that's been taken care of.
Berry City parking lot, we did a project last year with the bus loop.
Yeah.
Removed a section of the circular bus loop, created a straight
Yeah.
runway, so to speak.
Right.
To keep all the buses, that way all the buses can park up against the sidewalk,
Yeah, gotcha.
where we weren't able to do that in the past, which also addressed a lot of safety concerns.
Exterior wall siding at Berry City.
So that's a looming project in the future here. Long story short, a lot of the exterior siding is an aluminum skinned plywood finish, sitting in aluminum grid work. As the plywood sits in that aluminum grid work, there's a caulking that made the seal. Well, through the years, that caulking is failing and will continue to fail. So the plywood, the aluminum veneer that's attached to that is failing, starting to delaminate.
Yeah.
It's something we're going to need to address in the coming few years.
Yep.
Hard to put a date on it.
Probably beyond the 5 though. That's the scope of this.
Yeah,
Potentially.
it's starting to move up on the list.
Is that, yeah. Does it make sense maybe at the bottom of the list of like a parking lot, almost like we do on some of the agendas, items that are probably beyond the 5-year, but worth just throwing on there for visibility's sake? Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah.
Bus loop design is on there.
Sorry.
Bus loop design
Mhm.
is on there. And I think that's what you're talking about, isn't it?
Nope. Exterior wall siding.
Oh, sorry.
That's on the.
But that's on there too. Exterior wall siding is right
Yeah.
above door replacement.
Yeah, it is there. It's under to be determined.
Oh, there it
Berry
is. Okay.
City.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
The bus loop design actually probably could be removed from there. A little error on my part.
That's done. Okay.
Well, it partially, last year when we did that project, at the very beginning of it, we had a grander scale of kind of redesigning a little bit of the visitor parking lot. But once we lived with this, we kind of realized, the money to spend on that parking lot, we would better direct it somewhere else at this point, because the setup that we have now is working very well. So it's not really, toward the top of the list anymore.
Gotcha. And no BUSD building or C probably doesn't need anything at this point, right? Right.
It's a brand new building.
Thank
yeah.
goodness, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I should add it on there at some point.
Yeah.
the BUUSD central office building, kind of on such a smaller scale.
Yeah,
I suppose I should put it on the list, but certainly, and I have that as well. I'll share with you
you
what we're
got it,
doing
yeah.
there.
Yes,
this summer.
And then a question I had on the amounts, Jamie. So like, for example, for Berrytown for the flooring, so 15,000 a year. Does it make sense to throw, because I would assume you use this for budgeting as well, right? Kind of gives you an idea. Does it make sense to ramp those up for the 5 years going out? Because I mean, we're in crazy inflation this year, but does it make sense to, if we stay flat with the amount over the next 5 years, that means the amount of work we're going to do is less, right? Because it's going to pay for less in 5 years. So should you apply a 3% increase to that each year? You know what I mean? In terms of a number on here, does that make sense? Or so it's more realistic?
Yeah, I can throw a bigger number in there, and that 15,000 was based off of what the state law was at the time. as well.
Right, of course.
That
Yeah.
was my way of saying we're
Yep.
gonna do as much as we can for 15,000,
Gotcha.
knowing we had such a large list of all the other things we always want to do.
Yeah.
Because we try to do a little bit of everything, but then some years, we throw more money in one direction versus another.
Yep.
Some things get put on the back burner.
Yep. Yep.
But yes, I'll think about how to throw in a little more accurate.
If that makes
number,
sense. I mean, I'm
a
not,
flexible.
right? It's going to go up every year. That if we bought the same amount of beer, it's going to be more expensive every single year.
Yeah.
And then last question I had was, is it, and this isn't always easy to do, but is it possible to start chipping away and putting some numbers in these other fields too? So we have a ballpark. Again, it's not going to be, you're not getting estimates at the time, but if, an idea off the top of your head, what you think it might be, just so we can look at this and have a sense, especially
Yeah.
with budgeting coming, it'd be nice to see that.
Yeah, I can throw some wild numbers in it, some numbers to play with.
Yeah, that
Something
you-
to chew
yeah.
on. Sure.
Certainly not to hold anybody to, but just a ballpark.
Yep.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a couple questions?
Yep.
The proofing project for materials that are not available for Berry City for 2022, are you doing a different project with the budget, the amount that you budgeted for that?
So speaking of roofing, the original plan was to do a lot of roofing at Berry City and a lot of roofing at Berrytown. When we started seeking out bids and inquiring about doing roofing, we learned that the insulation that we'll need for the roof at Berry City, you just can't get it right now. So we had to kind of cancel doing any roofing project at Berry City for the summer. So we directed more of that money toward Berrytown. That money's coming out of the surplus money that we have to pay for that roofing. So that's the explanation of why we're not doing any roofing at Berry City. But, so blessing in disguise is it's gonna allow us to do all the necessary roofing at Berrytown, and after the summer, it'll be done, with the exception of the penthouse roofs on there.
The other question I have is about the capital improvement fund line item at the bottom. Is that what's included in the budget, or is that the capital improvement that carried over from your separate districts?
That is the annual construction money that's built into the maintenance budget.
Okay,
Those are my monies that, in a normal year, doing the floor tile work or the various smaller in-house projects.
well, with the 75 cents a square foot, I assume that's what it was, but I just wanted to make sure
Sure.
that I understood that it was what I thought it was.
Well, and I should probably correct that language, the capital improvement fund, to the construction line item, the annual construction line item.
Yeah,
That would
okay,
be more accurate, so, yeah, good call.
thank you.
Sure.
All right. Are there any other questions for Jamie? Andrea?
I'll give a community member question. I'm curious, in the past, there was some grant money, safety grant money from the state that Jamie was putting, he was rotating it between the buildings each year instead of splitting it up. Did that grant go away? Or are we still able, is the district still able to get those funds?
Yeah, we still have that. That's through BUUSD. And because we've had safety audits done in all of our buildings, it's ramped that, make sure I say this right. I think it's either 5,000 and it ramps it up to 7,500, or it's 7,500 and it ramps it up to 10,000. It's one of the two. I'm drawing a little fogginess on that. But yes, I rotate that from school to school annually. You know, if we were to split that money up between, you know, the 4 buildings, you wouldn't really get a whole lot done. So we kind of put it on a rotation basis. The latest time we used it at the new C building to help to start the security camera system in that building. To start from scratch, you know, it's a bit pricey, so we allocated that money to the C building.
That's annual, Jamie?
It's annual.
That's
Yeah.
annual, wow.
To answer your question, Andrea?
Yeah, I just wondered, because I thought we usually had it on this report. And that's why one of the buildings usually showed more money than the rest of them. And that was the reason why. And I saw they all had the same amount. So that's why I just wondered if that grant had gone away. And if it is here, who's going to be receiving it this year?
Well, and I purposely didn't put it on the 5-year plan because it's not an exact science which school gets it each year. We've gone long enough now where it's more of a necessity basis. Who needs it the most at that current year? You know, there's something really pressing is affecting one building more than the other, but there wasn't that higher on the list to receive it. We're not really doing it that way anymore. In the beginning, that's how we did it, but we've gone far enough along now. It's where whoever needs it the most at the moment.
Jamie, I have a quick question for you about the parking lot at Spalding. Near the CVCC entrance, there's that guardrail with the benches. There are handicap signs on the wall. Are those there for any particular reason?
That is to signify the handicap accessible ramp, so to speak.
Okay.
If you're entering, exiting the parking lot, that's to dictate, to show you where the accessible ramp is to get to the entrance. And I believe we have markings on the asphalt. And if we don't, they've worn, and that'll be something we'll address, during the summer.
Yeah, they have the portable signs that get moved when they plow and then they get put back.
Yeah. I want to say we have some lines painted on the ground, and if we don't, we'll refresh those this summer.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions for Jamie, we'll move on to old business. That's 6.1, the HVAC and sprinkler updates.
So bids are actually due tomorrow. Tomorrow by 4 o'clock, the bids are due from any contractors that's going to put a bid on this. Lisa and I back, I don't remember when it was now, early March or something, we advertised. I believe it was out to 4 different contractors. 2 or 3 of them showed some interest. One has shown a lot of interest. A second one went quiet there after a while. So Lisa and I expect that we may receive 1 bid tomorrow. May be surprised to get a second bid. Lisa has already reached out to the ESSER folks to make them aware of that. And I believe we're going to have some communication with them in the next day or 2 to start discussing our next steps. The federal guidelines, because this is federal money, is very strict. What you do, how do you do it, what timeline you do it. Lisa's been a stickler on following that, so it's helped make my job a little easier. So the bids are due tomorrow. We don't know exactly. This is a huge undertaking. The amount of money that we have kind of allocated for the ventilation upgrades is somewhere in the 6-point-something million out of the, and don't quote me on the exact numbers, this is just what I'm remembering, of the 10-point-something million that we were given. A little over 6 million of it's been allocated towards HVAC. We may find that majority of the money may end up being directed towards one building versus trying to do a little bit at all 3 buildings, not really accomplishing much. I'm going to dare say I think that's what we're going to find. That's a lot of what's been the feedback from the the contractor that's been doing site visits with me in all 3 buildings. But we'll learn more after we open up their bid. So stay tuned on that one. That's where we are at this point.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Who, what's the bid review process and who reviews the bids? I'm just curious.
I think that's a question we also will need to ask the ESSER folks,
Okay.
who helps make that determination.
Okay.
By no means am I a HVAC specialist of any kind.
Right.
We're gonna have to reach out for help with that one.
If everything goes good, Jamie, if everything progresses the way it's supposed to, when do you think anticipated start time? Wouldn't be before next summer, correct? This is a summer project only.
So once a contractor's been awarded the job, once they start developing the scope, designing it, all of that, I know we have until, I believe it's September of 2024 to spend these funds. By the time you award this project to somebody, they've designed it, they start, soliciting bids, putting it out, you're not gonna see any work happen this summer.
Right.
As crazy as that sounds, but it's not gonna happen this summer. Maybe by next winter break, February break, they may have it designed enough where they can then start doing maybe on the small scale, start setting some of the projects up, starting to maybe do preliminary work. But I think what you're gonna see is it's gonna be, a full, whatever, 6.5, 7, 8 weeks of work next summer of 23,
Okay.
as well as then strategically planned, projects throughout the school year. During vacation breaks,
Okay.
I think you're gonna see, we're gonna have to kind of confiscate sections of the building, close some sections down, allow the contractors to come in and do various amounts of that work. Yeah, it's gonna be a very, very tight schedule. That's how I foresee it.
Yeah.
Going down.
And then I think it was in the finance meeting, I don't think we were entirely sure, but the work also has to be done by 9/24, correct? September of 24, that
That's what I
it
understand.
has to be finished. and
Yeah.
completed.
Yeah.
Any other questions? So I'm glad to hear you say that, potentially it's one building, right? I was in a meeting the other day with the town, and they had put something out that they expected to come in around 200, and I think they said that they came in at 800. So that potentially could be the same thing here, right? So is there a, so like you said, you've got kind of 6.1 earmarked for this, but if the bid comes in and it's, oh my goodness, it's going to be 6.1 to do one building, that's obviously the plan.
I think so. I mean, it's not my decision, but I think, and I'm going based off of their recommendations. I mean, they're the specialists.
Mhm.
I'm going to dare say I think that's probably where you would go.
Yeah.
And this is, as your facilities director and knowing these buildings very well, I think that would be the wise decision, that you focus on the one building and do it right.
Yeah.
Berrytown has a great ventilation system. That building is air conditioned. Their filtering system is I'm going to probably say one of the better ones of the 3 buildings. And I'm not saying the filtering system in the other 2 buildings aren't good. It's just, I think Berrytown has just a better system. But Berry City, having said that, Berry City is the newer of all of our buildings. They have a great filtering system on them as well. This is the oldest building. This is the biggest building.
So probably be
Off the cuff, it seems to make sense. That's where you would probably do the major improvements.
Okay.
That's me shooting from the hip.
Yes. No, right. Of course, till we see it, we don't know, right? And then last question on this for you, and we kind of went back and forth on this a little bit. They'll also talk to you about the standards, right? So if that's the case, then they give you the scope of the job for here and everything. When that's done, that's up to current standards, correct? I would assume so, right?
It's a wait and see.
Understood.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I would assume if they're going to do something, they want to make it up to current standards.
But I want to dare say, they're probably going to say, well, if you want to throw more money at it to make it fully the way it should be, that's where we may be, that may be what we're facing.
Okay.
Just don't know yet.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
$6 million is a lot of money, but this is a 200.
This is a big building, yeah.
It's a huge building.
Yeah.
It's an old building. So
Jamie, could you also speak to the unforeseen issues that might come up?
I'm sorry, say that again?
The unforeseen issues like asbestos in the building, lead, all that remediation that might need to take place?
So we have learned that in a bunch of the webinars that I've attended about ESSER monies. It's not so much if, but when they get in the middle of the project, they come across asbestos installation on piping. You have to address it. They will fund it. They will find the money for it. They know you'll find surprises. So they have said that when you find it, don't ignore it. Don't pretend it's not there. Don't do the project. Make them aware. They will address it. They will fund it. They know they have to deal with it. So that was good news to hear. So whether it's asbestos, lead, PCBs, wherever they may find, probably will find, they will address it then.
Andrea?
Just for clarification, when you say they will address it, is they the state or federal?
It's federal money, so I'm going to say federal.
Okay.
Is that it for the 6.1? Does anyone have any other questions on that? All right, we'll move on to the PCB testing update. Jamie, do you have anything new and exciting for us on that?
New, but not so much exciting.
All right, I'll take it.
Tennessee received some information and forwarded it to me. We're on the list, the state of Vermont list for testing of all of our schools, but we're not going to see that testing until somewhere in the fall of 2023. They gave us a window of July to September of 2023 to do the testing. We're at the mercy of the state. The state only has a handful of testers, inspectors to go through all the buildings. For whatever reason, that's where we are on the list. I'm pretty sure it was from July to September of 2023. But what I will share of what we believe to be true, and this doesn't apply to Berry City because Berry City is new enough where PCBs is not a concern. Spalding and Berrytown has done a major lighting retrofit back in the 90s, where that's a lot of where they find PCBs is in the lighting ballast of light fixtures, fluorescent light fixtures. So all the lighting was done back in the 90s. So I'm going to dare say that we should be fine with that. A lot of the other issues is with caulking around windows. Same thing, Spalding High School back in the early 90s did a big retrofit and replaced all the windows. So we're hopeful that when the windows were done, all that old caulking was removed. At Berrytown, the very large portion of the windows have been replaced there. They do still have a lot of old windows there. But a few years ago, when the news came out about the Burlington High School and what they had going on with PCBs, we reached out to our environmental consultant that we used through the years. They came and did some spot testing of the material around our windows. They took samples, had it tested, and of the samples they took, none of it came back positive for PCBs. So fingers crossed, hopeful, that's a good sign that we may not have issues at Berrytown as well in that area. That's the primary areas that they look at is the old lighting and caulking around windows. But the inspectors will do a very thorough, sampling of our buildings. But we won't know that until fall of 2023. But what I don't know a lot about PCBs, but what I do know is much like asbestos, it's not so much it's dangerous that it's there, but it becomes dangerous when it becomes brittle and friable, where if it gets disturbed, the fibers, the dust, gets in the air on you, where you could inhale it or ingest it. So our buildings are they're in good shape even with the older windows and whatnot. The caulking isn't falling out, the windows aren't in disrepair. So I'd like to think that should it be there, it may just be as safe as it can be for what it is. That's about the most I have for an update on PCB testing.
Jamie, like reading on the AOE website and stuff, so they talk a lot about funding and stuff like that. If we needed to do remediation, would that be we would need to pay for that, or are we gonna get funding from the state? Any ideas or anything already about it?
So as of now, what they've shared is the funding to do the testing is on the state. If they find positive results for PCBs at this time, they're not saying there's any funding available yet. I would dare say, I would think they would have to provide some kind of funding, even a matching type funding. We just don't know that yet.
Do they have like and again, ballpark number that PCB remediation costs $1,000 per, do they have a ballpark that we could have in our head?
I've yet to hear anything
Okay.
like that. I don't know if they dare. I
Right.
don't know if they dare
Sure.
commit something like that.
Everything's different, right? Okay.
All right, any other questions for Jamie on the PCB update? All right, electric bus update. Jamie, what do you have for us?
Right, so just today I reached out to Stacy Emerson with STA. The second bus has been returned as of today, but they had a little snafu with the other bus. Apparently a student got a little rough and threw a rock at the bus and broke the window. So the window's been ordered. Nobody was hurt. The glass is intact, but it did the spider web stayed intact, cracking. So that bus will have to sit idle because I'm sure they determined it's not safe to drive with a broken window. So we've got two buses, but one's in limbo for a little bit. So we're almost there. Very close to having that settled.
Do you know what they found out on the bus that was shipped out?
From what Stacy shared with us, it was suspected there was something with some wiring going through the bus. They troubleshot that issue, whatever they had to do to correct it, they did it. The bus driver and the mechanic was driving it all around, making sure that whatever the issue was resolved. They've had it for quite some time now. We're being told that they found whatever the issue was. They found it. It's been shipped back here. Like I say, it literally arrived today. And good that it's there because then we have a broken window to the other one. So I don't know the exact details what they found, other than they found it and resolved it.
All right, thank you.
So then the charging station issues, Jamie, so pretty much all the issues that we had talked about at the board meeting, everything's resolved, everything's safe, we're cool, right? Everything's good? Yeah, okay. Is there anything that needs to be done left? Is there anything that's left that needs to be done with either of the stations?
So the charging stations that's on a pedestal is sitting in limbo just for a little bit because Chris Hennessy, Stacy Emerson, and I just need to sit down and kind of hammer out how we want to finish using the charging stations. We want to use the ones on the building or use the ones on the pedestal. What we need to come to an agreement on is that the underground wiring needs to be corrected so that there is no junction box in the ground for them to then re-energize the charging stations on a pedestal, which will allow us to get the buses a little bit further away from the building, which will make inspectors happier. But they haven't given us any mandate, any code in front, and
Right.
issue saying that you cannot have those buses there. Yeah. So we're complying with all the codes, all the laws.
Yeah, good.
I spoke with one of our members from Bisbit today that deals with facilities. And he and I, talked about it at quite length. And he said, this is new for us as well. We as your insurance carriers for the schools, we're kind of learning on the fly as well when it comes to electric buses. We're not breaking any codes, any laws by doing what we're doing.
Good. Why are there two sets? So there's the chargers on the building and then the stanchions. Why is there two different ones? Because they look different. They don't look the same, right? Is there something different?
Well, a little bit of it was Lion, the bus company. They sent the first chargers, and then apparently they weren't the correct ones for those type of buses. So they sent another set. They've been through a few sets of actual chargers themselves. But the reason the chargers are on the building itself was because that's where we could find the power to energize the chargers. As more time went on, and like everything through this process, when STA learned that within a few years, they would save money by spending their own money to put in a standalone charging system with this own meter, because the charging demand rates would be a lot less. In the long run, they would save money by having a separate pedestal mounted charging system for the buses. So that's why those were put in. And then, little snag happened, and the contractor, somebody didn't talk to somebody else, and when they installed it in the wrong location. So then when I found that, we worked with STA, and okay, we'll move it. But then something slipped through the cracks, and somebody didn't talk to somebody about getting approval to put a junction box in the ground. Had I been involved in that conversation, I would have said, no junction box in the ground. But it happened. It's all right. Well, we'll try it. If it works, great. Nothing happens, okay, great. But it didn't work out. So now they need to redo some of the wiring underground, and then they'll be 100%.
So the chargers on the building are powered by the building,
Correct.
and the other chargers are powered off the street.
Correct.
No kidding. Did we pay for both, or did they pay for both, or how did that work?
The
Pay for two
the
sets.
combination of the straight, some kind of grants, the Volkswagen settlement money, that all paid for all the installation on the building. The BUUSD didn't front any money for any of that. And for either one, whether the chargers on the building itself or the standalone pedestal mounted chargers, those were all monies other than school monies.
Yeah, gotcha.
District money.
And then, so the junction box is where it shorted out, correct?
Yeah.
Got hit by the plow or something?
The plow either hit it or drove over it and broke it. But when it happened at the nighttime hours. Our second shift custodians found it, reported it to Paul, our head of maintenance. He called Green Mountain Power. They de-energized it. So it was never energized when school was open.
Yep.
So what looked like to be a safety concern, it wasn't, because it was de-energized before students and staff ever came back to the building. So it kind of a perfect storm, able to deal with it.
Yeah, okay. And then the last question I have is obviously, so the permit issue. So there was a permit in place for both installations, is that correct?
I don't know.
Okay, so,
I'm not involved. I wasn't
Nope.
involved in that.
Okay. so who would be responsible? Because the information I got was from the state electrical inspector, and actually said, hey, I was driving by, saw they were doing the work, pulled in to see, no permit in place. Ooh, that's a big oversight. And again, I don't know how things work, if it's the contractor's responsibility or whomever's, but that's a big mess.
That's always on the contractor.
Okay,
Contractor doing the work.
okay,
I mean, speaking for myself, I mean, I'm a licensed electrician by
Right.
trade. If I do any work, that's on me to pull that permit. So I'm not gonna point fingers on, we're the recipients of the buses.
Yep.
I'm not STA, I'm not the electrical contractors. I can't speak for them.
agreed. And just, to be clear, so everybody understands, is there's no safety issues. There
Right.
may have been a permit issue, but there's no safety issue.
Correct.
That's just, it's a process issue, really.
Right.
So, yeah,
Right.
okay.
Paperwork process that if it didn't get followed, that's on them. That wasn't anything on us. Should it have been done? Yes, it should have.
Okay.
But I can't speak to whether it was or not.
Awesome, thank you.
Anything else for this topic? All right, we'll move on to the stormwater runoff update.
So that's an ongoing process. Fear of repeating myself. We've been awarded funding through, I gotta look at my notes, I don't want to say this wrong. Well, an independent funding source, let me just leave it at that without digging through a lot of paperwork. We were given funding to do the permitting, to do the feasibility study for the first phase of putting, stormwater mitigation on all three of our school properties. They are doing all the legwork on our behalf. We're in the process now where they're filing stormwater permits with the state of Vermont. Paperwork's being sought, invoices are coming our way. We're paying invoices for that permitting. They're in the process of doing feasibility study of how it could be built, where on the property it can be built. At some point, they'll bring that to us for, our review. So that's where we are at this point. That's the stage that they're at. Once the feasibility is done, it's determined this is where it can live, this is how it can be built. I believe at this point, last we were told, there's 80% funding available. We would be responsible for the 20% match to pay for that. That's the latest information we're given. It may change, it may go up to 90%, 100%, or it could go down the other direction and go down. But as of about a month ago, that's the information we were given, that is an 80% funding source. We're responsible for the other 20%. So we're waiting, working with the engineering firms that are doing the permit paperwork and designing at this stage. We do have some say though as well. We have some say to say if they pick a spot on one of our ball fields, and we have the right to say, well, that won't work for us because that's where our lacrosse teams play, or that's slated for an improvement, expansion down the road. So we do have some say as to what goes where. Just because we're not paying for it or paying for most of it doesn't mean we don't have any say in there.
So does that mean, Jamie, that they're designing stuff, so that they've done the analysis because we had talked last time there may be a waiver, but it doesn't sound like that's the case anymore?
Well, once they go through the feasibility study, if they come to a determination that, it's Spalding High School, for example, you just don't have the land, you just don't have the infrastructure, we just can't find anywhere to put it on your property. At that point, they start exploring the opt-out fee.
Gotcha.
There's a certain fee that you pay. And this has been a while since I learned this, but at the time we were told it was a one-time fee that you pay. I say it was $10,000 per acre that you would pay. So at that point, I'm not really sure what that amount would be. I'm not sure if they figure if it's based on 3 acres of impervious land, or if we have 5.2 acres of impervious land, it's so much, for every acre. I'm not exactly sure how they calculate it.
So can I interject here for a second? Because I was talking to my husband about this because he deals with a business that has to also do it. And the way that he understands is you have to pay upfront, like we're going to pay this much into the fund, and whether it's 10,000, 25, whatever it is, and then you do your project, and then that counts towards it's, like, okay, it was 25,000. Okay, well, we've already paid in our 25, and they basically were like, okay, you're clear then, you've paid your 25. If you don't do anything, you don't get that money back. Yeah, and I don't know if there's then continued like fees every year, but that's the way that he described it. So we will obviously, once we get like, here's the designs and here are your options, we'll want to make sure we understand that more clearly. I mean, I know that's a little bit down the road, but that was the way that he explained it to me for his business. And I don't know, is it different because it's a business versus a school? I don't know. I'm not sure if there's different regulations. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, and I was a little unclear when I learned of the opt-out fee, if it was a one-time fee or it was an annual fee. They were a little unclear. I don't think they knew at that time either.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
like you say,
I've heard several different variations. Like there was an opt-out fee, and then I heard that there was an annual fee, so that annually that money would go into a fund which would help promote other places to get funding and get their area taken care of. So I've heard it both ways.
yeah. So what at this point, what I do know is for this first stage, they're fully funding the feasibility study and all the legwork to design it. And again, at this point, we're being told there's 80% funding to help pay for the construction of it. That's the latest we've been told as of about a month ago when I asked that question.
Is there a ballpark timeline, Jamie?
Somewhere within the next few years, these are supposed to be
It's
installed.
not right off. Okay. Well,
But then we're responsible for maintaining it.
Yes. Which is why we also have some say as in what type of design there is. You know, there's some variations of how the system can be built. Kind of partnering a little bit with the city of Barry engineer. He's helping to inform me what other systems are out there, and he has actually proposed and pitched a different system than what one of the engineers has preliminarily described. And based on the Barry City engineer, it's a much more economical way to service years down the road, and a bit more economical to install. So I'm certainly all about that.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a learning curve.
Is it in all three buildings, Jamie, or just here?
It's for Spalding, Barry City, and Barry
Yeah,
Town.
it is. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
I believe it's any property that has 3 acres or more of impervious land, whether you're a school, business, whatever the case is.
Yeah. With that said, knowing, you know, like the athletic fields here are on the wish list item at some point, right? Does the district have any preliminary thoughts or ideas on what that would look like? So, you know, for you, when they come back and say, well, here's what we want, well, this is where we want to go, you know, it might be 5 years or 10 years down the road, but this is what we want to do. And Matt's going to mess all of it. I mean, right?
That's exactly what the situation we're in. So we, back in, I believe it was 2010, we spent a lot of time, Juliana was here for that. And we worked with DuBois and King. They designed a conceptual drawing of how our athletic fields would be reconfigured.
Okay.
I mean, it's an engineered, you know, set of drawings, an actual conceptual drawing of what it would look like. And that is one of the things that they actually ask you. Do you have any future plans for a certain, you know, part of your property that you want to upgrade, design, change? And if you do, let us know that, because we need to know that. In the early stages right now, they're showing for the high school of putting what's the word I want to use, the mitigation efforts, the collection of stormwater runoff right out in the middle of our ball fields.
Oh, my goodness.
It's underground, but it's underground where at some point you have to have access to it with some piping and whatnot to get in there to flush it out, to clean it, you know, every so often. But that's not going to be practical in the middle of our ball fields. You know, so right off the bat, you know, that's not going to work for us. But yes, we do have that conceptual drawing showing what our ball fields will look like. And I'll certainly share it with you folks too, for the sake of you seeing it.
Cool. Thank you.
Any other questions for Jamie? All right, we'll move on to other business. Nope.
Just one, Giuliano, if that's okay.
Sure.
So Jamie, at the finance meeting, we were just kind of going through the numbers, and there was a number in there for the roof issue at Barry City. What happened? Was it just the roof failed? Did it leak?
Roof issue or
what caused
parking lot
the?
issue?
I'm not sure, but it just said roofing on the financial stuff. Roofing failure. Was there a failure, or was there a leak, or something that caused the variance?
The only thing I'm aware of is the sinkhole issue we had in the parking lot.
Okay.
As far as roofing, other than a random leak from time to time, I didn't have any roofing failure.
Okay.
At Barry City.
Was it the roof drain that helped with the
Would it be?
the failure?
Yeah. So long story short, again, in the very beginning, when we found that we had that sinkhole near the building, we suspected the roof drain leaving the building, the pipe separated, broke in the parking lot, and that created the sinkhole. So once we got the contractor in there to start doing some digging to find that, yes, that was an issue, but the bigger issue was a leak in the main water line feeding the building. That's what was creating the larger sinkhole. And as that was happening, they suspect that that's when the pipe separated from roof drain. So we actually had 2 issues going on there.
But the issue was not on the roof. It was down.
Wasn't the roof itself, no.
Okay.
Water leaving the roof.
Okay. I'll look at my notes because I think that it said roof, but I'll make sure I read it wrong.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else for other business?
Well, so I can share with you for other business, just give you a summary of what our projects are going to be for this summer. So staying with Barry City Elementary, we've got 4 classrooms that we're going to remove the combination of VCT tile and carpeting and going back with just all tile. We're gonna get back on doing some of the Vitalic fitting work. And for folks that aren't aware of that, that's where the heating system, the metal piping, when the two pieces of pipe come together, there's a metal clamping and O-ring design that it's not a good design for heating systems. It's a good design for sprinkler systems because it's a constant, even, pressure, water temperature. But the annual heating and cooling of the heating system, we found that this metallic fittings is just not a good design. So we've been replacing those fittings with welded pipe, which is the cure, the fix-all for it. So we want to get back on that plan of removing a lot of that, like we have through many summers. So we're gonna do some more of that down on the ground floor of the building. Try to finish the rest of it coming out of the boiler room. So we have various areas down in the ground floor of the building that we're doing more of that this summer. So the water main issue coming into the building, actually partnering with the city of Barrie. They know that we need to have a main water shut-off valve just outside the building. For whatever reason, when the building was built, either they don't know where that valve is or it was not installed. So partnering with the city of Barrie, they're gonna provide the equipment, the labor to excavate that area again, rework the piping, install these valves. We need to purchase the valves. We'll purchase 2 valves. One is the main shut off for the building, and the other one will separate the shut off for the sprinkler or the fire hydrants around the building. So either or, if one or the other needs to be shut off, it won't affect the other. So if they have to come and service, do work to the hydrants, it won't shut water off to the building, or vice versa. If you have to shut the domestic water going to the building, it won't interfere with the sprinkler water feeding the building to protect it. So it's going to be money well spent to have those 2 valves installed. But again, and kudos working with the city of Barrie, they're going to help us with that because that at the same time helps right some wrongs on their end as well with the water line going to the building. Nothing to get excited over. No fancy bells or whistles on that one. It's just mechanics of correcting something that wasn't right. What else are we doing? A couple more of the student restrooms. We want to remove the bathroom partitions and replace it with the plastic acrylic type bathroom partitions that won't rust. You don't need to paint. We did 3 boys' bathrooms throughout the course of the school year during vacation breaks. We're going to tackle a couple more girls' bathrooms this summer. So, that's Barrie City for various projects, other than the routine, obviously maintenance and stripping and waxing floors and whatnot. Barrie Town doing a large area of the kind of the kindergarten wing, taking up carpet, putting down VCT tile. We're looking at getting somebody to come in and look at the granite seams, the granite exterior wall siding of the building. There's horizontal and vertical seams, and we're starting to notice that all the horizontal seams, looks like it's time to go in there, examine it, remortar it or recaulk all those horizontal seams. I'm not a granite specialist of any type, but it looks that the vertical seams are built the way they're supposed to. We first look at it, it looks like the mortar or caulking is missing. It looks like that's the way it's designed to probably allow the water to shed through those seams. So anyhow, we're working on getting somebody there to look at it, examine it, give us a quote to do what repairs are needed on exterior granite of that building. At this point, that's the bulk of what we're going to be doing for summer projects there, on top of routine repairs and maintenance. The central office building, the big project there is going to be repaving the parking lot. The existing asphalt parking lot will be repaved, as well as the crushed ledge that we had installed a couple summers ago behind the building. That's seasoned long enough now where it's done its job and done it well. We're going to repave that, or pave the rear portion of that as well. So that'll help shed a lot of the rainwater better, make it much easier to plow in the wintertime. Less damage, less cleanup in the springtime. See, the high school, same thing. We're gonna do about 4 different classrooms, removing asbestos floor tile, going back with BCP tile. Gonna renovate a couple of what used to be faculty restrooms. We're gonna renovate those, much like we did years ago with student bathrooms. Take out all the old tile, go in with new ceramic tile, new fixtures, new plumbing, lighting, things, give it an overhaul. We're also going to take a non-used vacant, I'm gonna call it a storeroom up in the main front lobby, and build and create a single-use, handicap accessible restroom. If you're a visitor or staff member or somebody that had the needs of an ADA compliant restroom, you'd have to go down the science hallways to access a bathroom. So we're going to take that empty, more or less storeroom and turn this room into a ADA compliant single-use bathroom. Let's see, we're going to replace the very front entry exterior doors coming into the Spalding High School main entrance. The inner set of doors we replaced a few years ago with new aluminum doors. Those have done well, serviced us well, showing that that's a good design of doors. So the very first set of doors you pass through to come into that alcove area, we're going to replace those this summer with the same style doors. Doing a little bit of a metallic replacement work in the boiler rooms here as well, getting some of that stuff out of the building. And then out along the river bank of the ball field out near the football bleacher stadium area. Some of our own staff, our groundskeeping staff has gone through there. At the moment, some people might think it looks bad, looks rough, what they've done, cutting down old trees, rotten trees, brush. But what's happened through the years, for decades, that's just overgrown. It's taken over the fence, it's taken over that riverbank. So we're trying to reclaim that, just cleaning it up, clearing it up, exposing the fence line again. We've kind of gone as far as we're able to go with what we have for manpower and equipment. We've got a quote for quite a small amount for an outside contractor to come in, finish cutting up, chipping, hauling away all that debris, which will clean up all that riverbank. Then we can, return it, plant some grass seed, bushes, whatnot, kind of let it kind of take over on its own. Actually worked with some of the science teacher folks here in this building. They've reached out to an outside organization that may help fund to plant the appropriate shrubbery and whatnot along the riverbank. There's things you can and cannot do when you start getting near riverbanks. So that's an effort this summer as well. I believe that's it.
Nothing at C, Jamie?
Sorry?
Nothing up to C, the C building?
C building, we just want to work a little bit about kind of regrading and reseeding sort of their ball field off to the side of the building, kind of dress it up, try to get it a little more established as a nice grassy field there. Other than that, it's going to be our first summer, so we'll go through, freshen up the building, probably do a little painting, annual servicing, inspections. No major projects at the C building.
Nancy, go ahead.
Yes, I have a question for Jamie. The Spalding High School parking lot has got some big craters. Is there any holes? Is there any plan to fix them?
Yeah, so the areas you're speaking of, that's the old parking lot that we never repaved, knowing that at some point when we redo the ball field renovation, that will all be removed. So we didn't want to spend the money to repave all of that back when we did the major repaving project. That's an annual, patch job that we do every year, and that'll be slated for this summer as well.
All right, because you got some, I'm sure you're well aware of it. You got some pretty big holes back there. And my tire disappeared on my front right going through it. And I didn't know if I was going to make it out or not. I have one more question. In regards to the cleanup by the river, has the environmental people been involved in, I wasn't quite sure what extent you were doing to the river, but has the environmental people been involved in what you can and can't do?
Well, I know we haven't done anything that we're not allowed to do.
Okay,
Years ago, we spent quite a bit of time on several sections of that riverbank to stabilize it. And we had to work with the state of Vermont to get the correct permits. We had state of Vermont engineers come and inspect the work that we wanted to do and what we did do as we were doing it. We were having a lot of eroding of that riverbank in a few areas. And again, we pulled permits and we had a contractor come and installed granite, they call it riprap, but granite stone to kind of rebuild and reconstruct the riverbank so it wouldn't erode any further. And we learned at that point, yeah, there's very little you can do near a riverbank that would require permits.
okay. Well, I was just wondering because sometimes they have you plant like certain trees or something that will kind of maintain. So I didn't know if they required you to put some other trees or something that would help support that system bank.
Yeah, and just to be clear, we haven't done anything to the riverbank itself. It's the
Right.
flat land leading over towards the riverbank.
Okay,
We haven't disturbed the riverbank itself. We just cut and disturbed the land, leading up to it. Which is what we're allowed to do, which is why, we haven't done anything, inappropriate. We haven't violated any kind of codes.
right. I just see a big pile of stuff over there in the trees and I know the river is right there. So I was just a curiosity question.
Yeah, it looks a little rough right now. It does, but our plan is to have that done this summer with an outside contractor to kind of pick up where we left off, where we're not really able to do much more of it on our own.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for that.
Anything else for other business? All right, we'll move on to items for future agenda.
So
Okay.
possibly the updated 5-year plan. If Jamie has time, if he doesn't, that's understandable.
That's with the estimated figures.
Yeah, if he has time, if you have time, Jamie, obviously.
Yeah, let me see what I can do.
Busy time of year, right? And then also the HVAC project, sounds like we'll definitely have some news on that, yeah.
Yeah, should have some news on which contractor has been awarded it and what their next steps are to start creating, what the plan is for
Yep.
a building or buildings.
Does it make sense PCBs and stormwater go to parking lot? I mean, those are gonna be quite a ways out. Can those just go to parking lot for now? If something comes up, you'll let us know?
Yes.
Yep.
Right.
And then, I mean, electric bus, if there's something, I guess, but it sounds like we're pretty much buttoned up.
Yeah, I think what dare say, by the next meeting, that both buses are gonna be on the road and it's gonna be old news.
And then lastly, I had someone ask me about, and I don't, forgive me, Jamie, because I don't know this, bollards, granite benches and tables. Is that something that's a project that's in an update essentially?
Yeah.
Is that something we could do?
So a few years ago, we had some safety grant money that helped pay for some granite benches and planters outside of the cafeteria library area. Some folks were upset because it wasn't local buried granite that was used. So we removed some of those items and we're working with a large local granite shed here to construct a much more massive, much more elaborate, system. But they, like everybody, they're behind the 8 ball with COVID and the way the world is.
So we just do an update?
Yeah,
just
so
a
it's
quick
something
update.
that has been promised to us, they will deliver.
Yeah, I'm going to play Robert's Rules Police. We're talking agenda items, so we shouldn't really be discussing it now. We should be discussing it at the next meeting because it's not warned on our agenda. So
Sure.
we kind of have to hold off.
Yep, well, that's fine. Don't keep me from talking.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Juliana. That's all I have.
Yeah, so do you want to add that to next month's agenda?
Yes, please, just a quick update, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good. I have information on that too as well.
We can share, yeah, okay, thank you. Cool.
Andrea?
So I just want to confirm, I have 4 things listed. An update on the 5-year plan with estimated figures, if Jamie has time. An HVAC update, a possible electric bus update, and the, you call them bollards or ballards? Benches and tables update.
Bollards.
Bollards.
Bollards, so that's 4 things if I heard correctly.
Clarify, I would call it granite benches / planters. That's more of what it is.
All right. So our next meeting date is June 13th, 6 p.m.
Yep.
Do you know where it'll be at?
All committee meetings are at Spalding.
Okay.
Oh, are you going to have another summer projects update, or will that be all set by then?
If I have any other newer updates, I'll give it to you in my report then.
Okay.
All right. I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
The motion, I'm looking for a second.
Second?
All right. All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Who was the
Opposed?
second, Giuliano?
That was Mary.
Thank you.
Or is Andy on here?
I think so.
Is Andy here with us?
He was.
He's on the screen.
Oh, there he is. Oh, okay,
Listen.
hey, yep, gotcha, okay.
I can't see everyone.
Cool.
So there's a motion, a second. And everyone voted? Okay, I'll assume everyone voted. It's unanimous.
I'll call it unanimous. Yep.
All right, we are adjourned at 7:13. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Thanks, Sonia. Cool.